Welcome to Oye Cinema Club. Today we're going to be reviewing the movie Pineapple Express, a movie that could be quoted so many times. But I'm not here by myself. I'm here with amazing hosts. We have here Jason Eccles and El Dondino. And the reason I picked this film was because I was prior to this last cinema club, I was already watching the film and I was like, this is such a great film. We should review it. And I just put it there. And that was the real reason why I picked it, because I was like, this movie still holds up and I want to discuss it with people, see what they thought. So, talking about that, before I give my first impressions, let's see what the other peeps thought in their first impression. Let's start with hater number one, Dino. Let's go.
I'm glad you said hater. I'm going to take the JP stance. Um, this is the second, maybe third time I've seen it, and I feel the same every single time. I There are a lot of funny moments in the film, a lot of funny performances. It's overall, it feels like a bunch or a lot of sketches, almost like SNL. And I mean, it starts with Bill Hader. That very first part, the black and white, is literally could just be a sketch from SNL. And I feel they had a few different ideas like that, that then they were like, how can we intertwine this in a movie? Which they did. My Watching again, I do appreciate a lot Danny McBride and Seth Rogen from the get go, from the first time I saw it, and before any of this um, thing came down with James Franco. His character is the one or his performance of the drug dealer, I just never cared for. I just didn't. I never bought it. I don't know. I just don't believe him in that role. I don't know if it's the long hair or what, or if he's playing stone to stone, but that always kind of takes me out of the movie. Him in it. It's everyone else is like killing it. I love Rosie Perez as like this bad cop. Like she's so sweet. You just would never think. Has she even played a bad guy before? Like, I mean, she's always had some sort of sass and being kind of angry and fiery. So yeah, so a lot of great moments, a lot of great performances. I really enjoyed Craig. Oh man, which is that Robinson? I'm confusing with everyone, but yeah, him and the other
Craig
guy.
Robinson.
I feel like they're the bargain bin Jules and Vincent from Pulp Fiction. Like I could have seen a whole movie of just them and their relationship just kind of deteriorating as a whole. Um, and as a stoner movie, I feel like there's so many other better stoner movies out there. Half Baked might be on the top there, and any of the Jay and Silent Bob movies that they're kind of in, specifically Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back or like Dogma or stuff like that. So I am glad that it was Seth Rogen's character dating a high schooler and not James Franco dating a high schooler, because that definitely wouldn't have aged well. Especially also since it's Amber Heard, and then she ended up marrying Johnny. There's all these like things now that I'm like, you said it aged well. I don't know, man. There's just the only thing that makes sense is we've literally been having a Pineapple Express right now in Southern California, and they explained that at the very beginning. So I was like, yeah, it's held up because I guess now is the time to grow some Pineapple Express. That's it. Damn, that's a long first impression.
Thank you for that, Dino. Let's go with Jason.
All right. So, yeah, I have seen this movie before. I've seen it a few times. I don't even remember how many. It just it's been on a lot. I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times. Um, I think this movie's funny. I was really interested to watch it again to see if it still held up, if it was still funny, and it is still funny. Um, it's It's funny for a different reason this time watching it than the initial, like, everything's new sort of shock, wearing on you. Because I know all the beats of this movie now. But I gotta say, this movie is about what makes it so good for me is that this movie is about relationship dynamics. All the characters that interact with each other all have this very strong charisma with one another, from the two main characters to the cop and the bad guy to then the two or the two henchmen characters, and then the relationship between the Danny McBride character and James Franco, and then his relationship with Seth Rogen. Like it is all about these weird dynamics and how they sort of bounce off each other, and it's very playful and it's very fun. And for me, it's a top 10 stoner film. I mean, these guys are right up there with Cheech and Chong, excuse me, for my buck, as far as like stoner comedies go. Comedies about marijuana or whatever. And there has been some good ones. There has been some good ones. And actually, I would imagine that Seth Rogen is probably responsible for a few of them. Uh, yeah, there was something that kind of struck me weird when the movie first started. I was like, oh, that's right, his girlfriend's in high school. I was like, I don't know how this is gonna, make me feel as I watched it. But it's weird for sure, and I don't like it. But I gotta be honest, it sort of makes up for it a little bit because it's so funny, and it's like you sort of forget about that weird dynamic between him and his high school girlfriend, because those back and forths between like him and the girlfriend, all those scenes are great, and the scene between like the girlfriend and the high school boy, like that whole interaction's great. With the high school teacher in there, that whole interaction's great. All those dynamics and character struggles and fighting for like to be on like all that's wonderful, and that's what makes this movie. This movie could have been about anything. It didn't have to be about weed. They just used it as a vehicle. This could have been a much darker film. Like this could have been a Tarantino film, honestly. Like it could have been something along those lines, but they just took this very comedic tone, playfulness to everything, where it also makes it a little bit more real but weird. It's hard to, I mean, they're all goofballs, like, and I guess that's what makes it funny. Like, and I do believe that, like, James Franco. I remember when this came out, I thought James Franco was fantastic. I was like, oh, James Franco can do anything. Like, this is like just really in his wheelhouse, and it's terrific. Now, I feel like most people, when they see this movie, this is like their then impression of James Franco. I think this is like the movie that they put on his in memoriam or something. Like,
Yeah.
it's a performance to me. But that's my first impression.
Damn.
Thank you so much, Jason. Uh, Let me give you my first impression. So this is probably, I don't know, maybe my sixth time watching this movie. I watched it many times throughout the years. I definitely watched it this time like maybe twice. And I really believe that's the reason this movie holds up. And I agree with Jason, which is like the more I watch it, is really more like, yeah, there's guns and stuff about marijuana and whatever, but it's really about relationship dynamics. Like it's really about like the core friendships amongst each other and that weird dynamic and like one person betraying another, but then forgiving each other and like that whole deal. And that's what makes it like fun, in my opinion, like what makes it hold up. I also agree with Dino in the sense of like when this movie came out, yeah, so it was all about like, oh yeah, James Franco, because at that time that that movie came out, James Franco was really popular as an actor. But the more I watch the movies, like other people stand out way more to me. Like for example, I it took me literally until my last watching to realize that was actually Rosie Perez. I could
Yeah.
not
Really?
I could, I could not believe it.
Get out
And
of here.
I didn't know, just like Jason was talking, like I was just like, oh, the high school girl, the high school girl. It wasn't until like the last time I was watching it that I was actually watching the credits. And when he said Amber Heard and stuff like that, I was like, oh, that's that's that person. I had no clue. So I wasn't paying that attention. And like Danny, like I also agree, Danny McBride to me, super standout in this film. And I don't know which version you guys saw, but I saw kind of like the unrated or uncut whatever version. So there's
Yeah.
like more banter, like in certain things, like you could tell like they let it roll instead of like cut it. And like yeah, it's just like there's something about the dynamic, the improv. There was like even one scene that I remember that like Danny McBride is just like crying because he's about to get like murked by Craig Robinson, the other guy, and they're just fighting about, yo, I can't do this shift alone and stuff. Just that little sketch, little scene was like so great, and it's like there's something about that is just like you can't recreate it. It's just like there's magic right there.
Yep.
And those are the things that I think make this movie legit. I think like they made a really good choice on picking like really iconic scenes and things like that to make this movie very memorable.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think. Oh, I'm sorry. You're still in your first impression.
no, go ahead. That was the end of my first impression.
Oh, cool. I was going to say that. Um, I think you're right. This movie, the reason it holds up for so long, and I think it's going to hold up for a very long time, is because the relationship dynamics are so strong. And each one tells its own little individual story. Like Zeno said, you could have watched the whole movie with just the two henchmen. I feel like
Yeah.
you could have watched a movie with just about any two characters in this thing. I mean, also
Yeah.
credit to characters like Gary Cole and Ed Bagley. Like, these guys are hilarious in this movie.
Just to chime in, I was literally thinking I could watch maybe not a whole movie, but I could watch many more scenes with the dad, like the whole family
Yeah. Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I thought the dad that was like a very minor character, like literally stole his
I
scene.
wanted them to have another scene together.
And
Mhm.
and also we didn't. I mean, you have the whole Asian mob part of it, and Ken Jeong is in it, right? And like that
And
could,
Bong
and
Joon-ho.
clearly they are all dysfunctional. Again, it is a very funny movie, and it is relationships because you know who does that really well. Also, Apatow. Most of his films are about that, and also Rogan, right? Super bad. All of those movies are about relationships, are about pairs, and then there's usually a third wheel that's kind of also friends, like McLovin, like they all kind of have these beats, as well as stoner movies. Harold and Kumar, like it's like all it's like a buddy cop film, but stoners.
And just like for example, Sandler movies, Rogan utilizes the same people. Because like for
Yeah.
example, I
Well,
watched this movie.
Apatow. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched this movie, then I watched Super Bad, and then I watched this movie again. And I realized that the guy that played the teacher, he's also
Yeah.
in Super
Joe Turturglio, and he's from the state. He's from that group of improvisers, and then Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You know, they're
Yeah,
all like small. There's like Chicago improvisers, New York and LA groundlings, and they're all kind of in the same shows. Some of them went and did Reno 911. So he pops up a bunch. And then so is I can't remember his name, but he was in the short-lived sitcom Grounded for Life, and he's the boyfriend of the girl that's dancing with Cena. No, what's his name? That ends up having period on his jeans.
yeah, Jonah
The
Hill.
Yeah, on Jonah Hill, the boyfriend that starts chasing them is the one of the henchmen.
One of the henchmen. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Craig Robinson's buddy. Oh.
How great is the opening scene of this movie?
Again, could watch a whole film. I mean, clearly they kill him off in the right outside, but could watch a whole movie about that because clearly that's like making fun of reefer madness and all that kind of propaganda and what's stoner kind of like, oh my god, there's the government, like we're creating or testing this. So yeah, I
Bill
thought
Hader
and
is terrific in that
I
opening
thought
scene.
Yeah, I thought the military dude was gonna come back the first time. The guy with the eye patch at the very beginning. I thought maybe he
He's
was
gonna come
gonna
back
be
later in the
involved.
movie.
Huh?
You thought he was gonna come back later in the movie
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because he looked so defined.
Yes.
Like he looked like there was more story to him. That
Right.
could have been a whole story. You're absolutely right. There could have been a whole movie with Bill Hader, like
Yeah.
being a Gomer Pyle type character in the army and gets pulled into this thing, and
Right.
this thing wakes him up and it sends him in the 1930s or 40s. It sends him on a tailwind adventure because
I
The
like
opposite of
marijuana has like enlightened him.
the
I
opposite
guarantee
of Captain America, right? Like this goofball or whatever, and they're testing on soldiers to create like a super soldier or some sort of assassin, and it's kind of like Life of Brian that he gets confused as a messiah next to Jesus, but it's like they're trying to create this Captain America, but they just create this stoner
Uh,
stoner soldier. Yeah,
yeah,
Steve.
no, I was gonna
I,
say I guarantee you there's like more than likely they shot scenes that
Oh yeah.
they cut. They cut. But I'm pretty sure they had things that they filmed that they were probably, yeah, we have to cut this for the
Well,
film.
a lot of them they do improv, right? They'll have shots, and I mean clearly that's when they're getting the guns and everything, and they kept cutting back to lines that they were saying. Like that's just them getting fed lines or improvising and just rolling camera. That's what Apatow and all of them kind of do in their comedies. Oh, going back to the high school girl though, this is probably one of the best uses of the age difference. Unlike the one that has aged worse is um uh the one that's based on the comic book that now there's a cartoon on Netflix. Pilgrim, Scott Pilgrim, like his girlfriend, because they specifically say that she's 17 or whatever, and he's like 20 something. And this one, at least, they make a reference that she's going to college the very next year. Thus, she's 18, right? So at least that's kind of made thing. But again, what makes it even funnier and works is a they like she's 18, but b like him calling back and wanting not to break up and like coming like I love you and all this, like making him be the one that's like kind of the child in the relationship, only for like we should get married, and then he's like, oh, I made a mistake. That's kind of like Ben Stiller in Tropic Thunder. I'm gonna stay here. This is my son. This is whatever. Like I think I've really got to them, and so he's gonna stay back. And then he's like, I made a mistake, and he's getting stabbed by the little kid on the back. It's one of those things where it's like, I think I found something really good, and it's like, let's get married. Oh, never mind.
I love those little touches of the film. Like it was
Yeah.
sprinkled. It's all those little moments are sprinkled through them, and I could tell, especially by watching it like a second time, not in a row, but just like in a very small time frame. I could tell that at the end of the day, it comes like to make such a good film like this. It comes down to like it starts with the script. I could tell just by looking at certain things. I'm like, this was in the script. Like, yeah, there's a lot of improv that is definitely not in the script, but there's so much in the script that gives you so much detail that allows you to play.
there's a
And I
ton of
think,
structure for sure.
yeah, yeah. And I think
And yeah, this film is written well. You can tell. Like, actually, it's
Yeah.
funny you mentioned that. While I was watching it, I thought to myself, like, you should probably just read this screenplay because I want to know what was in the movie and what wasn't in the movie. I want to know what the actors added, and also I think it'll be a really good look at seeing how. I mean, I know it's a proper film structure. Like, it's very tight, and it goes on an adventure, and it follows all the archetypes of an adventure. It's a buddy movie essentially, and they go on this adventure together, and it's almost Joseph Campbell, really. It's all there, but it will be nice to read it to see how they structured it, on the for the eye.
The Another character, speaking of what we could follow, who was a liaison like not even a cop, but she's liaison, the one that
Oh,
had
the
that.
school police liaison or whatever.
Yeah, like that's a whole show, right? I mean,
Such a funny line because they had made mention to her earlier in the play. Like they make mention to her. They say,
yeah,
I don't make me call the police liaison, which I thought was a funny line right from the start. I'm like, that's a terrific line. And then she actually shows up and it's this woman.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, I mean, you got of course mall cops and all that, but it's like
She's the only
liaison,
straight person in the whole movie. Everybody else in this movie is a bad guy except for her.
the mom, I guess Amber
Maybe
Heard's
the
mom.
mom,
I don't know.
maybe the mom and dad are fine.
I don't know. The dad's on a whole nother level, but the mom's the one really trying to kind of like make it.
Listen,
There are
that
very few good people in this
that
movie.
listen. If someone's protecting their house and that's the first weapon they pull out, there's something going
What?
on.
It was a rifle. It looked like a hunting rifle or something, right? No?
It was a gun. It was a rifle.
Yeah. Wasn't like
So
a
that
I
AK
still
40.
think the shots he took at them was a little excessive. It looked like he was aiming to kill them for real.
Yeah.
It's like you're
I
going to kill
mean,
these two dudes in your house. Like, I can see the
yeah.
other one. You thinking he's a drug dealer? I don't know who these guys are at all. It's
Well,
weird.
yeah, he gets stabbed with a fork. There's some great, yeah, fight scenes, if you will. I was just hoping for a second it was Nora Dunn, I think, but I was hoping that it would have been the same. It would be funny. Like again, they reuse the same characters. So if it was, and there's a little crossover, but if it was the parents in Step Brothers, being like if they just in all the Apatow movies and or the like Will Ferrell or like if they're just the old couple parents in all movies, and he's like always the cranky dad. Like, yeah, I would love that if they did kind of like their own stock characters. Like, all right, you're always playing. We need uptight parents in a movie. Here you go. We got you.
now, uh, we've talked about so many different things of the movie. Something we definitely have to touch are the fight scenes and stuff like that, because there's a lot of different action sequences here. Uh, in my opinion, like before, it's very flashy and everything, but I really enjoyed, again, watching it that second time, was the fight scene between Danny McBride, Seth Rogen, and James Franco at the house. Just because it was so unpredictable with like the things they were throwing and stuff. So it wasn't like your standard, I guess, like Hollywood esque like fight scene. And that's what I really enjoyed.
No, it was really terrific. You know, and obviously, like you can't really write that. They sort of had to like figure that out. I bet beat by beat. I'm sure that you had a few bits in there, but I'm sure they had to make most of that up. And what makes it so interesting to me, that fight scene, is how much Danny McBride builds it up before it happens. Like he's making himself out to be this tough guy. He's got on a kimono. He's got the armpits. Like he really builds himself up to be like this thing. And
I,
as
I
soon as he starts
really,
fighting,
I
it's like he's
really
not
want
trying
to
to hurt
know.
anyone.
I really want to know if that line was in the script or that he made it up.
He
That
made
he's
it up.
aerodynamic.
He made that up. But that's Danny McBride all day. That's his whole thing.
So
Um,
good.
yeah, I really do like that fight scene. It's very well choreographed fight scene. I love how Danny McBride, he really is trying to like hurt these guys, but he really is not very good at hurting people. You can tell he's kind of like a teddy bear. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. He's trying to step on James Franco's crotch at one point. Like that's its fight move. You know what I mean? Like it's
I
just
don't
I
know
also
how they.
I was gonna say I also love like if you like again, that's why rewatching this movie is so great because like I really enjoyed the very little like there's so many little details like very little details that make his character so enriching. For example, from when we like not even see him, it's just James Franco's character talking about him. He's talking really nice about this guy. Then when we start seeing him and he starts interacting with them, he's like, "Oh, like I'm going I'm taking like this exam for college and like all this stuff." And then like, "Oh, I'm gonna call my wife and all this stuff." And then towards the very end, he's saying like his wife is coming out of jail. So like we're like seeing this character like slowly like face his own reality, like the real
Well,
stuff. And it's just amazing. Just like all those little details.
it's terrific. It's terrific. All these characters sort of have their own details. You just know who they
Yeah.
are. You know what neighborhood they're from. You know who their other friends are. You know they all have this life, and it's all defined so well that you don't even like think about it or second guess. You just know who they are.
Of that fight, I don't know how they do it. It sounds the sound mixing and all that is when they break the door down and Danny McBride hits that porcelain wash basin sink and then falls
Terrific.
on the ground is just the blink, like we've all like hit it or something and it makes that noise
That's what
and it's
makes it
on the
funny. The
and he's like
details.
the how they I mean I'm sure it's rubber but it's right there with those like freaking John Wick movies or just using anything for like a weapon and yeah that to me gets me every time like I knew that watching I'm like I gotta I can't wait to see that sink uh head bashing because I know it's
I
gonna be
forgot
wild
about it.
and I'm still gonna try and figure out how it's done you know so yeah.
So let's talk about favorite characters. Well, you can choose favorite character or favorite scene, or you can do both. Let's
Favorite
start with
character's
Jason.
tough, man. Favorite character's tough because this thing's like loaded with people. Um, but I often look forward to a couple characters in this movie. I do actually really like the Jane Franco character, um, because he's playing this archetype, this basic stoner, pothead, drug dealer, like just loser. But then like he makes him so layered with emotion. Whereas he's not like super layered with like backstory, and that's a part of like what makes it funny until they introduce the grandma and stuff like that. Then you start saying like, oh, this guy has death and he's working to put his grandma in this nice nursing home. Like he turns into this really sweet guy, but he's still a stoner or whatever. But they give him all these layers and textures emotionally because like he's lonely and he's like dealing pot out of his little apartment all day. And he doesn't meet any friends, and he finds this guy who is his like they would probably be friends in another life, but because of this dynamic, they can't be friends. But so there's a barrier even between their friendship. I really like that, and I really like I really like Danny McBride's character a lot, honestly. And there's something funny, even though kind of small, about David. What's his name? Daniel David Craig or Craig Day, whatever that guy's name is. The black
Oh, Craig Robinson.
Craig
Robinson.
Robinson. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Craig Robinson. I really like him too, man, because like he does so much with all his lines in this movie. He just says funny stuff, and it's just the way he says it. Like, where this dude is like the voice of reason, like because he
Yeah.
sounds like a black guy. You know what I mean? He sounds like the black voice of reason in this thing, even though he's like in on it. And I guess also the black lady officer is sort of like the voice of reason too. It's just like, all right, let's get down to earth here. This is what's right and this is what's wrong and this is how it's going to
Yeah,
go.
on two extremes, right? Clearly,
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Which makes that pretty. Those are all very funny characters to me for those reasons.
Um, I mean, I gotta say, probably Danny McBride. The fact that also his house, like, I love the idea. Clearly, also a drug dealer, and is still in his mom's house where he grew up, grandma's, because it's all decorated with like the crocheted lampshades that like everything all the colors it's like all this like clearly it was a house from like the 50s or 60s every it has that weird pepto bismol pink like clearly he inherited the house or moved in, and it's just like this old house. The first time watching it, that's some of the best reveals because you're watching it. Oh shit, they killed him. Okay. And then he goes back to the house, and dude had been eating noodles in the bathroom and dying slowly, and got some wine coolers. And like, oh shit, he survived. And then at the end, like, he's like, nah, I'm out of here. And then he comes and kills Craig with a freaking car, which I was waiting again because those are some pretty big action scenes. And I was like, oh, I want to see if they cut him in half or what. I couldn't quite remember. And so like he makes a second appearance, and then at the end, again, you think he's out of the movie three times because then the freaking barn explodes, and then he like runs out, and then at the very end they have the thing where he kind of died, and then they woke him back up. So yeah, uh, I think he just steals the movie, but so
I
many
also
characters again. Yeah,
I also wonder if that last time that we see him again was not even
yeah.
in the script, and they were like, you know what, fuck it, just you're part of it.
I think that whole diner room. Oh, you mean surviving the explosion? I
Yeah,
thought the whole
yeah.
diner scene just seems completely improvised. It's them just goofing off one line after another. Just
But just
it's
him.
so.
But I'm talking about him surviving. Like
Oh,
I think like at the end was probably just gonna be him, James Franco, and Seth Rogen.
this is one of his earlier movies, right?
Who?
'Cause
Franco?
no,
Danny.
Danny. Because
Oh, yeah.
that group of comedians saw his kung fu movie or karate movie, and
This
it
is
just
pretty
seems
early
like
on.
they it seemed like they had him in movies and then liked him, so just kept kind of having him before like he blew up. And I don't know if this was one of those where it's like, oh, it's gonna be a small role, like a maybe one scene or two scene kind of thing, and then it's just like, oh, he's so much fun, let's just keep him in the movie.
Did this come out before or after Tropic Thunder? This was before Tropic Thunder?
But even Tropic Thunder is a even smaller role,
Yeah, but
right?
which one came first?
Tropic Thunder came out what, '08. This one came before that. Work, telephone work.
I think this came
Let's
out
see.
after, or probably around the same time. I was
Both of
this
these
Tropic.
films, they came out 2008. Both of these films.
say
Uh,
there you go. Came out
well,
around the same time.
yeah.
What about what do we know about box office and budget on these things?
It
I don't
had to
know.
do good. It definitely had to do great even after.
Hmm?
It probably did great even after box office, like DVD sales and stuff. You know.
Oh yeah, I'm sure this movie cleaned up on DVD. This would have been right in the DVD soft spot. I mean, sweet spot.
So box office, it says that the film went on to gross 87.3 million in the US, 14.2 million in other territories, and worldwide 101.
On a $27 million budget.
Yeah.
On a $27 million budget. So this movie did fantastic, right? It it tripled its money at least. So this is
It did an opening, it did 23 million.
on opening day.
Yeah.
It almost made its budget back opening weekend. So this
So
movie a smash success. It did great for them.
yeah. Well, this is kind of the height of those movies, especially you were talking about the unrated. All those movies, as soon as it would come out, then on DVD, there would be unrated. Super bad. This one, all the Apatow films, uh, Ben Stiller, Adam Sandler, all of those, it was just kind of like, not only do you watch it in theater, Anchorman, right? then you can wait for the DVD, and there were going to be all these extra scenes or just like unrated. That most of those were either PG-13 or rated R when they came out. So yeah,
I feel
I
like
mean,
the
yeah, here you
unrated stuff was. I could be wrong, but
what?
I feel like the unrated stuff really peaked around like American Pie road trip kind of era. Like it started with American Pie, it kind of peaked around like the road trip era or European road
Yeah,
trip. Now every movie all of a sudden had a unrated version, the
old school.
X version we could show you in theaters.
Yeah, old school. It was usually you see a little more boobs, you see more, profanity and more sexual jokes. Yeah, so Danik McBride, the Foot Fist Way was '06. I never seen Hot Rod, but he was in that in '07. I guess he was Buddy at Party in Superbad, but uncredited. I'm hearing an echo, an echo. Pineapple Express, Tropic Thunder '08, and then he did Eastbound and Down, started in '09, and that's when he shut up, I believe. Hello? Hello?
All right, very cool. So do we want to go into final thoughts or
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about in the movie?
nothing else I can
No?
think of?
Then let's go into final thoughts. Let's start how we got started. So, Dino, what are your final thoughts?
I'm still a hater, even though I do think this movie is funny. I do think it has a lot of great little stuff. James Franco, which is weird because you guys really are giving him flowers, and I just never quite liked his performance in this film, and that's from the first time I watched it to now. I feel like he plays well in some of these other comedies with the same people, but I just feel like someone else would have played so much better up against Seth. No, Seth Rogen. Yes, Rogen. No, yes. Is that it? Seth Rogen. What can I think? Is that Seth Rogen? I'm going crazy. Okay, that's it. I mean, I'll recommend this movie to whoever I recommend it to.
Thank you for that, Dino. Let's go with Jason.
Okay. I do want to say that yeah, I think this movie is funny. I would definitely recommend it to all types of people, man. Not everyone, obviously, because there's a lot of reference to drugs and sex and all kind of language in this thing. So it's not a comedy for everybody. But if you want a raunchy, kind of funny, comedy, um, this is right up anybody's alley. If you want a buddy comedy, if you want a stoner comedy, if you don't mind them going pretty blue, then yeah, this is for those people, which I think is a healthy amount of people, honestly. At least people I know. This movie is for adults. Um, you know, uh, I would probably watch this again. I would watch this again if I was if it was, I don't know, watching it with a buddy or pal. I don't know what reason I would watch this again, but I wouldn't like turn my nose up at it. I wouldn't watch it anytime soon, but I wouldn't shun this movie away because there's a lot to like about it. So I'm sure it'll get revisited someday for some reason.
Thank you for that, Jason. Now let's go with Steve for final thoughts. Thank you for that, Steve. Um, Final thoughts. This movie holds up very well. I agree with Jason what he said earlier that this movie is gonna hold up for a long time, more than likely. I do agree with that. I would definitely recommend this movie to people that are curious about American culture. So people are not Americans. So people haven't been exposed but kind of want to be exposed. The reason I say this is because when I watched this movie, I watched it with a friend of mine from Switzerland. And literally she's never heard of these movies in her life.
Hmm.
So there's still a very large amount of people in the world that have never seen these type of comedies, and she told me she enjoyed it a lot. And after that, that's we watched Super Bad and stuff like that. So it was like cool for me to like kind of introduce like, oh, these are movies that I kind of grew up watching or whatever, and watching it with another person, watching it for the first time. It was definitely a very enjoyable experience. So I would definitely recommend it to Europeans and people like that are not necessarily American culture wise knowledgeable, but kind of want to be curious about it. So I would definitely recommend that. So those were my final thoughts.
Very cool. So just before we get out of here, one last reference that I think deserves some acknowledgement. Although Dino's opinion is very valid in his own, uh, uh, James Franco was actually nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance in this film, just to give the audience the other side of this thing. So,
That makes no sense. Danny McBride should have been nominated.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
He was kind of he was kind of the sweetheart of Hollywood, right? A
James Franco?
comedian-ish, yeah, like straight comedian kind of actor.
Yeah. But he was definitely one of Hollywood's sweethearts at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like unlike the other comedians in this movie or other even disaster artists or other movies
He
that
had
he
a,
was
a
involved
larger
with.
role than everybody else in this movie. He's one of the leads. He's one of the two leads.
Right, but I'm just saying in the other movies he also popped up. I just
Oh
remember,
yeah, I think he's
and
nominated
maybe
for disaster artist as well, right?
he won for that
He
one.
won. He won
That's where
for that.
that's after that is where it got weird with then Me Too and all that and all the allegations either resurfaced or that was the first time they came up.
He also won a Golden Globe for James Dean.
Oh, I never saw that one.
It was a
But
biopic, '02.
yeah.
Some of his earlier work. So I do have one more question before we go. Oh, Dina, do you have something else?
No, I'm done.
So my final question before we go is, Steve, what you got for us next week?
Next week, I don't know why you asked me because I just went. But it is Dino's turn.
Oh, what do you got
Uh
for us?
oh. Okay, I'll bring this up because I want to see if you get. So this is a movie I might have watched as a kid. One of those where I watch a lot of them where I watched way too early as a kid, not knowing I shouldn't watch it. Maybe I think one, but I don't remember. So maybe when I watch it now, I might be like, oh, I kind of remember that. But a dear great actor just passed away, and really funny, Predator, and in Happy Gilmore, Arrested Development, Carl Weathers, Rocky. So I picked one of his films. Do you want to guess, Jason?
Action Jackson.
That's the one, baby. That's the one. I don't remember. And that's in Detroit. Was it filmed in Detroit, Jason? Do you know about it?
I don't know if it was filmed in Detroit. I'll definitely find out. But that is Detroit's skyline from back in the day. That's Detroit's skyline.
What a great tag there, huh? Like
Time for
his
action.
name, nickname, home.
That looks like Selma Hayek. But who is that? Who's that co-star? I guess we'll find out next week.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out.
So for
right.
Held on Dino, and that goes me, Steve Destiny. We catch you next week. Bye bye.
Bye.